Hey everybody, it's time to talk about micro entries. Well, what are micro entries? Well, they're small entries to buy little micro machines. Okay, that's not true, but it would be cool. So micro entries are small entries, really small entries. But we need to look at what the ACH rules say about these really small entries. According to the upcoming ACH rule, micro entries are defined as an ACH credit of less than $1 and any offsetting ACH debits that are used for the purpose of verifying a receiver's account. Wait, what? You see, micro entries, or these really small entries, deposits, they are actually something that's been in use for a while, and they're generally accepted as a practice in the electronic payments industry for verifying and validating a receiver's account. Well, now what we have happening is NACHA is defining them as micro entries, but you may also hear them called test transactions or test deposits, maybe even mini deposits or micro deposits. This new ACH rule is defining micro entries, but it's also standardizing the micro entry description in some of the formats we want to be able to use and things like the company name. And they're doing that to make it easier for those in the industry that are working with these micro entries to be able to identify that we're working with micro entries. The rule also establishes micro entry origination best practices while also establishing risk management requirements for the origination of micro entries. In other words, this is how you do it. It is important to note that this new rule, it becomes effective in 2 phases. Phase 1, September 16th, 2022. Now in this phase, phase 1, the term micro entry, it gets officially defined, which we've already given the definition. And originators will be required to follow some formatting standards so that they will be able to, of course, in the industry again, be able to identify that these really small entries are indeed micro entries. And originators will need to start following proper origination practices for micro entries. Oh, and then we have phase 2. Now phase 2, that takes place March 17th, 2023. Now in phase 2, originators of micro entries will be required to use commercially reasonable fraud detection. That's going to include things like monitoring of micro entries forward and return volume. Okay, we'll get to more of that here in a minute. But first, let's take a look at how the new rule, again, defines micro entries as a type of entry. I thought you said you already defined it. I did, but we're going to go into more detail now. A micro entry is defined as a credit or debit entry that's used by an originator for the purpose of verifying a receiver's account or an individual's access to an account. Verifying receiver's account or access to account. For the entry to qualify as a micro entry, it must be in the amount of less than $1, but have an actual amount and not be zero. Also, one or more debit micro entries must not exceed in total the amount of the corresponding credit micro entry. Wait, what? It's called offsetting. We'll get to that too. This definition, it accommodates the existing practice of, again, offsetting the amount of credit micro entries. What we do is we send a credit and then we send a debit, maybe more than one, that actually nets the total verification practice to $0. We don't want to be taking money out. We won't want to be putting money in, so we use a debit and a credit. It does permit debit offsets, though, to be greater than $1, only to offset the amount of a credit micro entry. Okay, if I lost you there, don't worry, as there's actually more to come. But for now, well, because for a class on little micro entries money, this has gone on way too long. And we're not done, so you might want to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss part 2 coming out here really soon. In this class, we defined a micro entry and when the rules go into effect. And in the next class, we will look at some examples of origination requirements. And if you want even more, there's a subject you want covered, then email me, kevin@paymentsprofessor.com. We are here to serve you and to help you by creating exceptional education that is fun, entertaining, and engaging. I'll see you in a future class. For now, class dismissed.